Live.
Hey everybody, Capt Ron here. Sorry, we're running a little bit behind here again. I have to claim most of the credit for it. I forgot to send a link to our special guest, and I was waiting for her to show up. And of course, she couldn't show up till she had the link. So here we are, and with another weekly episode of Fearless Flight Live. Place for you if you have a fear of flying, if you know somebody who's got a fear of flying, or you just like talking about airplanes in the aviation industry like we do. We welcome you back every week. Thanks for showing up and putting your trust in us. We're excited. I mentioned that we do have a guest tonight. Before I do that, I want to talk about the what did I do? Sorry, I cut myself out here.
That's okay. In the meantime, I just want to say hey to Captain Eric, and Flight Attendant Diane is preparing actually for work, so we'll miss her tonight and we'll see her next week, hopefully.
Okay. Yeah, not to be excluded there. Birds of a Feather, it's our exclusive private Facebook page. We encourage you to join along with the 1,000+ other members we have. It's getting more and more merrier as people join, and you can just about count on the fact that somebody will come in there and have an experience that you've had that may benefit you or have an idea. And so that's the best thing that one of the best things that we've added to the show here, or added to the program. Special guest, as I mentioned, Ann Gray. We're going to make a pitch for the Fearless Flight app again. We'll talk a little bit about the 301 graduation flight the next week coming up in Boston. And any questions, of course, if you have a comment, please leave it on in the remarks there, and we'll get to it if it's relevant for the show and we have time. Otherwise, we'll answer those later, maybe in a follow-up afterwards or in a future meeting. We're going to talk about the monthly live coaching webinar, which will come up a week from this Thursday, and again the growing Fearless Flyer Club. So we really appreciate all of your support, as I said, and we're looking forward to greater and greater participation. I wanted to real quickly talk about the last week's live Clear for Takeoff in 101 in-person class that we had, and we had a really great group. We had a small group, but a really great group, and that fellow right there down in the right forefront there in front of me was our supervisor that did it, and he was just amazing and really got into it, right, Eric? I mean, we was just really added to the energy of the group and had some really good information for everybody. And one of the things I wanted to say real quick, you probably can't see this, I didn't make a slide for it, but there's a service that the TSA has called the TSA Cares, and you can, and Dieter, maybe you can copy this and put it in there. It's 855-787-2227 855-787-2227. And what that is a service they provide. So if you call them up 3 or 4 days ahead of your trip, they can make arrangements to escort you through the TSA process if that adds a little bit of anxiety, or you haven't flown for a while, like many of our people have not. So anyway, that's something that you can do. And let's see, let's go back to our guest tonight. I want to open that up, and I'm not sharing, correct? I think no, I'm sharing.
I was going to tell everybody, Dieter and I will still be here for anybody else watching. We'll answer questions later, but we're going to blank out and let Ron and Ann talk for a little bit. So we're still here.
Yeah. So I'm gonna invite our special guest Ann Gray to come in here. That's a phenomenal picture of her up in the cockpit. I'll let her talk about that a little bit. This is Ann has become a frequent flyer as a guest on our show. She's just an awesome person, and I think we met before the pandemic. She came to one of our live classes, I think, and then she came on and was on our first online course, and you've become immortalized because you're part of the course curriculum now. And so I always like to get you back, and you checked in with me. What was it, late last year when you made this your most recent trip, or?
Yeah, I checked in for a checkup.
Yeah.
I hadn't flown in a long time because of the pandemic, and I had a big trip ahead of me, and I just needed to touch base with you. And so that was probably, I think, in September.
Great. And so we've been talking back and forth, and Anne is just a gracious person and gracious host or guest on the show. So anyway, so I wanted to talk to you. I made just a couple of questions I want to make. And the first one is, how did you know that it was time to do something about your fear of flying?
Well, that's a very interesting question. And I've got a little presentation. I'm happy to go through it, but I do want to answer this question right away. It was so bad that nothing about a trip was enjoyable anymore.
Yeah.
Traveling was always a priority. My husband travels a lot. He wanted me along with him, and nothing about the trip. I couldn't focus on anything beside the flight.
Yeah.
And the dread became so unbearable. You know, what's the weather going to be? What are the qualifications of the pilot? What airline are we on? What seat am I going to be in? You know, what airport are we going into? It was unbearable anticipatory dread.
Okay. And just a follow up to that, and then I want you to talk about the things that you had prepared. There is the thing that the average, when I've surveyed people, the average length of time before people formally seek some kind of help for it is typically 10 years. Would you say that was your category, or?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I can tell you the moment where the fear began, and I have figured out why now, but it was about 10 years of just awful white knuckling it before I sought help. And I should have a long time ago, but you think you can get through it.
Yeah. Because I think
what's available.
Those are really relevant questions for people who join us, because why should they believe that it's going to be any different? You know, it's such an abstract problem, and it's so difficult to imagine how you would even overcome this thing, because it all takes place up in your head. And so I think it's really important to hear people like you. And basically the answer comes out is I got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and
right.
Some people take up on that. So anyway,
but it's a process, and and you have to be thoughtful, and you have to be, what I know now, to be intentional about it and smart about it. And you have to understand what's going on in yourself, first of all. So do you want me to go forward?
Yeah. I just want to emphasize the word you use, intentional. I love that. You have to be intentional. You have to pay attention on purpose, and that's good. So so just take us through the thing, and if you want any of the pictures that you mentioned to me, just let me know, and I can flash them on and off in between, too, as well. So
am I taking up the whole screen at this point? I don't know.
I think it's you and I side by side, but do you have any PowerPoint slides that you want to show?
I've got them right here in my hand.
Okay.
I'll pin you so that we have that on the screen. So I spotlight you for everyone.
Perfect.
Yeah, there you go.
So hello, fellow fearful flyers. I'm a recovering fearful flyer, and I want you to know that I can't imagine anyone being more afraid than I was to get on a plane. And it was just torture. And it was heartache. And every single time I got on a plane, I basically thought that I will not see the other side. So it wasn't any fun. I have been in the back of a plane with flight attendants with oxygen. I have had panic attacks on a flight. I have had the worst anticipatory dread leading up to flying that you can imagine, where it was paralyzing. It was affecting my husband. I had all those horrible symptoms that we have all experienced and know full well how difficult and traumatic they are, and how it takes away from the joy of a trip that you've got planned, and the joy of preparing for a trip. So I have made a presentation before, but putting this together, I wanted to leave you and give you things that were really actionable, that you could execute on, and that you can have in your pocket to not, to have hope, really, to have hope that you can overcome it. Because if I did, and I have, I was on 12 flights in 1 month in November in South America without a problem. Without a problem. A couple of years when my son was in the Peace Corps in Africa, another huge trip for our family. It was 13 or 14 flights in South Africa and through Zambia. I did it without a problem. No one can believe it, especially my own family, but I just want to give you hope that if you do the work, it's really possible. To not do the work is just going to cause you to continue to basically white knuckle or, experience a flight, either drunk or out on Xanax.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, you can get to a point where you can actually look forward to a flight, enjoy it, even if there's turbulence, and not be focused on that as a life or death moment.
Yeah. And the
So-
key is to emphasize actionable items because,
Yeah.
I want to say, just intervene quickly. You were someone that just really engaged with the things that we had to offer. But the thing I want to emphasize to everybody, it's not, it would be great if something said would really trigger people or give them an aha or something like that. But it's what you unveil about yourself or within yourself, and that's our goal, is to help people find insights of their own, because that's what makes a lasting treatment.
Yeah, I so agree, Ron. And I think you were the one that helped me. Actually, before I met you, I did have I think it was, years before I met you. I don't know, I think I found the psychologist/pilot on the internet. And what he told me to begin with was, and here are my 4 points to this presentation.
Yeah.
Evaluate, educate, meditate, and then activate. So I want to start with what evaluation means. And that means to me, and I hope it means to you, you've got to get to the origin of your fear. What is the origin of the fear? To just be aware of it and to have it is horrible. And in order to overcome it, you have got to understand where it comes from. And it seemed to be a mystery to me. I flew without a problem till I was 28 years old. My husband flies without a problem. My siblings fly without a problem. My friends, my children. What happened to me? And through some evaluation and through some deep digging, which is what it took, you have to dig deep, I really figured out what the origin was, where this came from for me. And it basically started when I was a young mother at 28 years old. Why did it start for me as a mother? Because when I was a child, there were two traumatic events in my life. I had a sister die in a tragic accident, and then I had a father die 4 years later as a young man. And all of a sudden, as a young mother at 28 years old, I'm over the Atlantic Ocean on my way to Ireland with a baby. And for some reason, there was turbulence, and all those things just clicked in the most dysfunctional of ways. And I thought, and I knew bad things can happen to you. Your sister dies, your father dies, turbulence, I've got a baby. And all of a sudden, that is when my fear started to become unreasonable and out of control. And I didn't recognize that starting point for years. So my counsel to anyone out there who is experiencing the kind of fear that I did is to dig deep into your own emotional background to say, why is this happening? Where is this coming from? And at least then I had an answer. I thought, okay, now I know a little bit about this. What do I do next? So 10 years later, after a lot of difficult flights, oxygen, panic, blah, 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 I find Captain Ron. And that's when the educate part comes in. And the second point in my hope for you is that you educate yourself. Once you know where the fear is coming from, then you have got to take the personal responsibility to educate yourself. And what does that mean? What does education mean? Well, it means taking Captain Ron's classes. I went to Sky Harbor, I went to his big class, and then I went back to the smaller class. I took his classes. I sat there and I listened to a trained pilot. I did one-on-one calls with Captain Ron. So I was able to dig a little deeper into the mechanics and the how-tos and pilot training and, you know, what the FAA is capable of and what it does. And all that helped me because I needed answers. I learned about flying. I did a little research myself and I figured out, okay, these things are built to fly. These monstrosities that we fear are so built to fly because they've got these amazing engines that provide a thrust. The way these wings are engineered, the lift is normal. It's going to happen. And once that plane is in the air, it flies. It flies. It's physics, it's science, and that really helped me a lot.
And let me just add this, because there are some people out there that, you know, a lot of people now that say, I know that it's safe. I know that airplanes will fly. I just don't like being cooped up and I offer to them, I say, you know, it's still education that's going to unlock that for you, because you know, if you weren't afraid that something would happen, at least bottom line, you wouldn't be afraid to be in the airplane to start with, you know, and that's what, so I find that education is a common denominator for everybody, no matter whether you're mechanically triggered by the thoughts of the airplane crashing or whether you're triggered by claustrophobia and anticipatory anxiety.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, for me, education for any topic has always been the thing that has soothed me. You don't know what you don't know until you do the work. And then all of a sudden things make sense because you realize that other people know, other people are able to help you, other people can tell you what you're thinking is unreasonable. And part of it is too, Ron, is that it's your own responsibility. And you know, you're a smart human being. You can kind of figure this out yourself. So all I'm saying is education is one tool, you know, to understand how highly trained pilots are, to understand how competitive it is to become an airline pilot, to understand how planes are built. I went to the Boeing facility in Seattle. That's how nuts. I went and I had to see how these things were built. And then you listen to the engineers. And that, for me, was part of how I was going to calm myself and create less fear. So the other thing that you have to educate yourself on are your tools. And you, Captain Ron, have provided me with so many great tools. And this is where the work comes in. You've got to educate yourself. And then in addition, you've got to take advantage of your tools. So what was really important for me was just remembering to breathe, you know, to sit and breathe beforehand and to change the tape in my head. The tape in my head was, if I get on this plane, my children will be motherless. Bad things happen. Turbulence takes down planes. I can't make it because it feels so claustrophobic. I don't know who this pilot is. I don't know who these people are if they had a good day up in the tower, on and on and on. You have to change the tape ahead of time. I also think that the harmonizer, which is this crazy, crazy tool that Captain Ron created, it's just so bizarre, but it's so helpful. You put that harmonizer in your ear and your brain is diverted from your thoughts of fear. Now, the other, if you wouldn't mind showing this slide, Ron.
Yeah.
And I've done this for years. I have introduced myself to the pilots without shame or embarrassment or reservation. I go up into the cockpit. I ask the flight attendant if I may have a moment, and they 9 times out of 10 say yes. I say, hi, I'm Ann. I'm going such and such a place. I'm a fearful flyer trying to get over it. Will you tell me about the route? Will you, is there turbulence? These guys, and I'm going to say with the exception of 2 flights, one, not in the distant past, 2 women were sitting in the cockpit, which I loved, but they're mostly men. But anyways, the pilots being the point, they turn to me and with great compassion and great kindness, and they take it seriously. They say, you know what? This is our route of travel. We are fully prepared for this. I have flown this route, X number of times. You're in good hands. And one pilot, when I was going out to my son's wedding a year ago, he said, now I want you to sit back and know that I've got this. And when the turbulence hits, we're going to just, go through a rough patch over the Rocky Mountains. I want you to know that I'm calm and I'm in complete control. So hearing and seeing these people in the cockpit, their confidence, their parents, their spouses, they're all going home to these people. That's what I often hear.
Yeah.
It's an amazing, calming opportunity. And I highly, highly encourage you to leave a lot of people won't do this because they're too embarrassed. Forget it.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to remember you 2 seconds after you get off that plane. And
Right.
the benefit to this is infinite. And I cannot tell you the number of enjoyable experiences I've had when I have introduced myself to the pilot.
Yeah,
So
and it's the connection that I think that's the most important, and it personalizes it. So it makes them part of the crew and the experience. And I've said this before, you really do them a favor too, because it reminds them that not everybody flies as often as they do, and so it's a unique experience. There's always, I always figured there was always some person that was there for their first time on just about every place.
The statistics are that 1 out of 6 people on that plane are fearful flyers. 1 out of 6. So if no one else is introducing themselves, you're doing someone else a favor by reminding the pilot. And secondly, I cannot tell you the amount of human kindness that has come my way from the cockpit.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, in that one photo, the captain says to me, come on in and sit down. Let me show you how this is done. And if you're lucky, like I was once, I was coming back from the Czech Republic and I had introduced myself to the pilot and I was dreading this long flight. And I had we're on the runway, some airport in the Czech Republic, and the pilot comes on and says, this is for Mrs. Gray sitting with her family. And he's saying, don't worry, be happy to the entire flight.
Oh my gosh, that's cool.
You just can't believe what you're met with when you show a little vulnerability. And so the other things I want to offer really quick are, in terms of what I had to educate myself on, is how important it is to have your earphones so that you can block out sound, so that you can put Fleetwood Mac on or whatever your thing is, as high as it goes. And it distracts your brain, the harmonizer, your earphones, your pilot intros. Get yourself a mantra too.
Yeah.
And as you're walking down the entrance into the plane, I'll offer you mine only because it's mine. But I say to myself, my fears are not the reality of the situation. My fears are just my fears. It's not the reality. I am safe. I am safe. My fears are not the reality. That's my mantra. And I sit down and I say that a couple of times. And when the turbulence hit, I remind myself of that.
And again, that goes back to what you said, it's actionable. You need to do something that comes from that part of you. Otherwise, that part of that little voice in your head will take over. And I tell people it operates at the speed of light, much faster than you can come up with counter things. So you do need to practice this in advance before you get in that situation.
Well, you told me a long time ago, Ron, that if you allow your lizard brain to be in control, meaning if you've got to that point where it's fight or flight because you're so panicked, it is extremely difficult to regain control. That's when I was in the back of the plane and the flight attendants were giving me oxygen.
Yeah.
You can't, you don't have to get to that point. That's the big revelation for me, because you've got tools, because you can cope, because you can have a mantra. You've done the work. You've got the breathing. You've got a distraction, and two more little quick distractions, and then I just got two more points.
Okay.
You taught me a long time ago that 120 seconds, 2 minutes after takeoff, that's a time where, I'm not a fan of takeoff, but 2 minutes into the air and that plane is flying. You don't really have to think about anything till the plane starts to descend.
Right.
So I take off my watch, it's got a second hand, and I watch 2 minutes every single time. And by the end of that 2 minutes, I can breathe a sigh of relief and say, I literally have nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I tell people that, the first 2 minutes, if you can make it through the first 2 minutes of flight, you got it knocked, because that's about 95% of the anxiety that will be triggering, that. So it's good. And I've got some new activities that I've been using with it. Have them open their stopwatch function on their portable device, whether it's a phone or a tablet, something like that, to do something similar to, mark the takeoff and then watch that. Because now you've got a task, again, that's actionable. You can put that in your hand. It's tactile and kinesthetic and all that. So that's a great idea. Great idea.
So by that point, you've got your origins of the fear. You've evaluated that. You've educated yourself about the physics of flying, pilot training. You've got your tools. So my next step that I offer is you meditate. You meditate. And I offer this quote to you, a mind based in reality, when a mind is based in reality, not fear, that mind based in reality will allow you to peacefully not only prepare to fly, but to fly. But you've got to remind yourself when these thoughts creep in that it's not the reality of the situation. So I would offer, sit for a minute or two, several weeks before you've got a flight, and do your breathing. It's 4 in, it's 4 out, 4 times. And during those couple of minutes, remind yourself, this is what I do as I'm breathing, flying is an ordinary experience and a safe method of transportation. That's what I just say to myself. It is an ordinary experience. I assigned it life or death every time I got on a plane. Was I going to see my children again? No, it is ordinary. It's so ordinary. Remind yourself in this meditation, just the pilots are so highly capable, so trained, so vetted. The planes are so reliable, so safe. And my fears are not the reality. So
did you find yourself, before you came up with these strategies on your own, Ian, did you find yourself, when you begin to get anxious, to just kind of surrendering to the fear, and just saying, I can't do this? What was it like before? Because I think, that's a bridge that people want to know how to get past.
It was just a torturous experience. It was, I didn't have the tools to be anything but fearful. In all honesty. And, I relied on my husband too much. I never got intoxicated, but I took a Xanax, with a glass of wine, and you feel like you feel terrible afterwards. I hadn't done the work. It was just that simple. I hadn't done the work.
Yeah. And I think that's key is, going back to what you said earlier, you've got to come up with actionable steps, because if you don't, we're just built to worry. I mean, that's part of our normal
That's
state.
Exactly right. And flying, isn't, we haven't evolved to the point that it's so natural. I mean, in the course of human existence, flying is still a relatively new thing. So I mean, for many of us, especially, with some trauma that you can figure out how this all plays in, you have got to be more intentional and thoughtful about how I get through this. Otherwise, what a lot of people do, people I know, they just don't get on an airplane.
Right.
They just don't. And that's a choice. You
Yep.
don't have to get on an airplane. You don't have
Exactly.
to. You can still have a great life,
Yep.
but you're not going to see the Galapagos. You're going to drive across the country instead of fly to your son's wedding.
I'll just run some of those while you continue to talk and remind people this is why you don't want to be stuck on the ground.
Yeah. And, I got a call from my sister several months ago that our mother wasn't going to live a long time. And could we all get there right away for a weekend with her? We were coming from all parts of the country. And, I was able to get on. There she is, my sweet mother and my children. And that was the last time we were with her. And it's because, I was able to get on a plane instantly.
Yeah. That's a common thing that people share with me. Is one of the things that moves people sometimes is they had a parent who died and they couldn't even go to their funeral. And it was really devastating.
And that's the last time I saw my mother here, and we knew it. And I was able to get on the plane. So it's not just, a fabulous vacation somewhere. It's also moments like this. This is just a place in New York, a visit. My son lives in New York, and he said, "Mom, why don't you come up after Christmas?" Well, I live in North Carolina, and I got on a plane and we went back to Phoenix, hometown. And I'm able to have these experiences because I can get on a plane. There's the Galapagos Islands.
That's one of my bucket list places. I wanted to go to. I really want to go visit that. And again, just to kind of give people a quick travel log, you went how many flights and how many days did you have?
It was a long planned trip, canceled twice for COVID with a dear friend of mine. And we went because it was her bucket list. This is Machu Picchu. And she was in the midst of a cancer treatment during COVID. And I said to her, wherever you want to go, let's just make that happen. And you can look forward to it and I'll go with you wherever you want to go. And she said, I want to go to Machu Picchu and the Galapagos Islands. So we went. And and it was fabulous. It was fabulous. But this trip between, that's Arizona and my son's wedding, this trip in South America was about 12 flights in the course of 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was able to enjoy the trip because I wasn't dreading the next flight.
Right. And I remember when you contacted me, I think another thing that's important is you were noticing, some of the anxiety. You hadn't flown during COVID, I believe. And it came up. And this is the other thing that I tell people, we now have a coaching class that people can participate in. And we also have a membership. And I tell people, it's not just getting over it for the one flight that you want to make or the trip you want to make. It's about doing something so you don't have to go back and start from scratch every time. And that's why, I was amazed at the things that you said, I got to do this, this, and this. And you just went right back into it. And basically you healed thyself, for this trip that you just took. So.
Well, I healed thyself only because of yourself. It was with help and support. And I offer this to whoever's listening. It's almost impossible to do it on your own. I don't know if this is a reasonable comparison, but if you're an alcoholic, you're not taking care of things by yourself.
Right.
If you're a fearful flyer, you need the support of a community. And you need the support of experts. And that's what I was given. So my last point, I'll just finish since I did it. Okay, so we've got evaluate, we've got educate, we've got meditate, and then what do you do next? You activate. And what does that mean? Go to the airport with confidence. At that point, you've done the work. Just go with confidence. If you don't feel confident, act confident. Trust the tools and trust yourself that you've educated yourself.
Mhm.
Trust yourself, give yourself a break. Get on the plane. Just
Yeah.
get on the plane. Don't turn around at any point. If you have done everything that I've suggested and that Captain Ron in these classes suggested, you've got your tools, you've done your mantras, you've gone to the classes, get on the plane, get on the plane. And this is kind of weird, but I think it's just helpful, especially to me. Just be helpful and kind to someone else. It gets you out of your own head. It's darn good karma that you're sharing in the world. And you forget about yourself. Look for the mother who needs help carrying the stroller. Someone, just consider that your mission is to be helpful to someone else. It's not all about you.
Getting out of yourself. I find that exactly. And that's what powers me in this is I love watching people grow. And everybody talks about what you give or what I give and stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is what you get in return, the feelings that come back from just helping and supporting other people. And that's why the community, again, is so important to when you share things that you've learned and you get from others. And so I really, really wanted to affirm that. So,
and give yourself some credit, pat yourself on the back and just say, here I am, I've done the work. Now I'm going to execute on the hard work that I've done, and then keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It is the key to the growth. It is the key to your future ability to fly without the anxiety and fear.
Yeah.
And all I can say is, I'm the example of what used to be a fearful flyer who now I'm going to Portugal in a couple of weeks. I'm not even thinking about the flight. I'm actually thinking about what I'm going to eat in Lisbon.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Anne, so much. And I'm going to ask Dieter if we have any comments or questions about what you said, and then we're going to close this just talking about the things that you touched on in the new developments that we have here. So, Dieter, if you want to come on, if you have anything to say, I'm going to.
Yeah, there's one question for you, Anne. There's lots of hearts and lots of thumbs up, and but one question
Thank you.
is when did you actually notice, like, was there a moment on your journey, or did it just kind of like happen more gradual? But when did you actually notice that you weren't experiencing the same kind of anxiety and trauma about flying, right? So I guess the question is, did you actually mark that point consciously, or was it an event, or how did that come about when you actually realized, oh, wow, I guess.
I mean, that's just such an interesting question, because I'll turn to my husband flying sometimes and he'll say, you've done a great job. Good job. Like, I'm not, he remembers. I mean, he might actually be the one to answer this question, but it started to get easier, honestly, after some of Captain Ron's classes. And that was probably, I don't know, Ron, maybe like 7 years ago.
Sure.
Maybe a little longer, something like that. I was flying more. I was getting on planes. I was doing the work. I was taking it all seriously, and I would say the hard work resulted. It's not overnight. Believe me, when turbulence hits, I go to my mantra. It's not like my husband sitting next to me, who is unaware of it.
Yeah.
I'm still aware of it, and I understand I'm on a plane. I think Jeff, he's just so happy to not be doing anything and sitting there.
Yeah.
I said to him, I said, would you have been affected if, that flight that dropped 1,000 feet twice? He said, I would have had complete trust in the plane itself.
Yeah.
So I guess my answer is, It wasn't overnight. It was a little bit of a process, but things started to get really better after Captain Ron's classes and being very intentional and thoughtful about it.
Right. And again, I'm gonna emphasize that it's your intention in your mindfulness. It's paying attention to where your attention is, and then making a conscious choice to either let it run away with you or go to something that you previously planned and talked about.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
you need a plan before you get on the airplane. And
you've got to have your earphones.
Yeah.
You've got to have your Fleetwood Mac. You've got to have, in my case, my little packet of Calm, which is just magnesium. You've got to have your mantra. You've got to have done the work before you get on the plane.
Yeah.
But that's
the thing that surprised me the most over 35 years is I didn't know when I first started doing this and helping this psychologist, but I realized that you can do so much before you ever get on the airplane. And that's where the work takes place. It's the education, like you said, which dominates that. You've got to do something different from what you would do otherwise. Otherwise, you're just going to fall back into the same old patterns and be stuck with the same old results. So
yeah, exactly. But it can change. I mean, that's the amazing thing. It doesn't have to be like this for you forever.
yeah.
Captain Ron, in one of your classes, I still use this. You had us all sit in the chairs, and then we all had to pretend we were taking off, and we all sat back and we all had to go, woo! Just to make the takeoff a little lighter, and I still think of that. That's still a thought in my head. When the plane's taking off, I'm thinking, wee, so it's just these little things that add up to an experience where you can be, I'll never be like my husband. Never.
Yeah.
But I'm not plagued with fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, that leaning back in the chair and screaming "wee" during takeoff, putting your arms up, that's really fun if the airplane isn't full. That's a good way to empty out your whole row.
I do it in my head.
Every time. I'll do it out loud. As loudly.
When we do it in the classes and stuff, but we do that, and Eric's usually leading the charge there, and
it's fun.
You can see just the people around us, they get a kick out of it, and it does.
And that's what you remember.
Where you're at. So
yeah.
Anyway.
So I just reach out to everybody, and my heart goes out to everyone, because I know what this is like, and I know what the feeling is like, and I know what you've been missing or would like to do without this fear. But I truly offer from my bottom of my heart that it can get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Thanks.
that it is a process. I think that is, you've really highlighted that, because, everybody obviously wants immediate, relief and gratification. But it is a process. And when you work the process, it'll work for you. And you're such a wonderful example for doing that.
And the more you fly, I mean, all of us, you're going to go through turbulence. Okay, you're going to go through turbulence. You go through turbulence. You go through turbulence. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. So
nothing happens if you're strapped in. There was a little side conversation.
Good point, Dieter. After the news of last week, we should add to Ann's deal. Nothing happens if seatbelted in. Nothing happens if seatbelted in. Nothing happens if seatbelted in. Yeah.
Right. As a passenger, that's right. I feel very badly for the flight attendants, but my point is the exposure, the repeated exposure is very, very helpful.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate but flying there's only one way you can get it, and that's to get in the airplane. And you had that on one of your things, says you got to get on the airplane. One of our past followers, Tom Rosh, he said, sooner or later, you got to get on the damn airplane. And, you really do, because that's the only way you can get over it. So thanks, Ann. I'm just going to run through a couple of highlights here. If you have any comments, please feel free to share. One of the things that we've added since you were here, we have a Fearless Flyer Club now, and we have an app that people can go on to, and anything that we have now is available through the app, which makes it much more convenient for people to do that, whether it's the 201 course, whether it's the the 101 course, whether it's the putting mindfulness into practice, all those things are available on the app now. And Dieter and I are really working towards making that much more common for people to go to and get access to everything out there. I want to say a quick highlight to the people in Boston. I'll be out there hopefully arriving early Friday morning, and we'll be going down to Baltimore and back on next Saturday, March 11th. And then if you live out in the LA area or you're going to be anywhere near Burbank on March 25th and you want to go flying with us there, we're going to go to Sacramento and back on March 25th. Coming up a week from this Thursday will be our next monthly coaching session. And we've titled that Rolling Down the River. We're going to talk about the purpose of mindfulness and many of the things that Anne highlighted tonight on how do you get to that place where you can notice some relaxation, and it's available to anyone who wants to do it, as Anne so eloquently pointed out. So with that, I'm going to thank you once again, Anne, for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. You're a great ambassador for people out there who are looking to get over this. And thanks for sharing the time with us tonight. So
My pleasure.
Nice job, Anne. Good to see you. Very
All right.
good job.
Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah.
Anything else, Dieter?
Yeah, there's just two more things. So somebody wanted to know if the app is only available with the course. That is not true. I think Michelle asked that question. I think you, if I remember correctly, you have the Fearless Flight Kit, so you can also use the app for that. But just like we had Anne as a guest presenter in the Cleared for Takeoff 201 course, that is available all on the app as well as putting mindfulness into practice, and even the audios.
You need things when you're ready, not when we're ready. So that's why the app is so helpful, and the courses and all the information there. So and we'll be talking about that more and more, and we're going to be introducing newer additional material for the 201. We're going to be adding information in the 201 or the monthly coaching sessions and all that. So having the app is the best way to keep updated and have access to it. So anyway, so again, thanks Eric, thanks Dieter, and thanks again so much, Anne, for being with us tonight. Really appreciate it, and thanks to all of you out there for another episode of Fearless Flight Live. We'll see you again next week. Thanks a lot. Have a great week.
You guys, don't forget the time change. Time change.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, some places time changes next week. So
we'll forget it. Don't you forget.